Welcome to the Asbestos Knowledge Empire.
What does asbestos management mean to you?
I used to really struggle with the asbestos management at my site, but now it's a breeze.
It used to be really expensive. I was paying loads, but now I've got my asbestos power team in place. It's so much easier.
Asbestos can be a pain in the arse if not handled right.
We had to stop the job because asbestos was discovered. Now we don't have that problem.
Asbestos management is easier than you think. Asbestos management. Be proactive, not reactive. Think about asbestos first, not last.
And now your hosts, best-selling authors and asbestos experts, Ian Stone and Neil Munro.
Hi, welcome to the Asbestos Knowledge Empire. My name's Neil Munro.
I'm Ian Stone.
So today we're going to talk about 4-stage clearances or certificates for reoccupation.
Yeah, or site assessment for reoccupation.
Yeah.
That's what it's referred to as in the guidance. Generally speaking, we call them 4-stage clearances.
We do in the industry, but the end product is the certificate for reoccupation, isn't it? So that's the actual end product following the process of the 4-stage clearance.
So when would we carry one out? When would one be undertaken?
This is only undertaken on completion of licensed enclosure work. So where there's been an asbestos enclosure to remove asbestos materials, this is the end check-in verification process to make sure that it's safe for the occupants to reoccupy those areas following the works.
So you said there's 4 stages. Should we talk through each stage one by one?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So stage 1 is the preliminary check of site condition and job completeness. That is a hello. So yeah, what does that actually mean? Well, basically, the long and short of a stage 1 is to check the paperwork.
Yeah.
Make sure that the contractor's paperwork on paper matches what they're actually doing.
Yeah, that's an important element, isn't it? So during the licensed contractors pre-works, they have to notify the works, don't they?
Yes.
So to the HC. So that all should correspond all the way through, shouldn't it? So whatever they've put in their plan of works, whatever they've notified it, should actually match up to what the analyst is checking at this point in time.
Yeah. It can change. I mean, for us as a company, when we carry out the 4-stage clearances, generally speaking, we've been on site all the way through the project.
Yeah.
We've literally managed the contractor from beginning to end. So we've seen all that process. But what stage 1 is there for, it's for companies that are just turning up to do a clearance air test. Now, a lot of contractors just get analysts in to do a clearance.
Yeah.
Because it's the requirement, they need it, whereas they won't necessarily have like full project management or full air monitoring throughout. But as a client, I mean, it's always our recommendation that they have full air monitoring throughout the project because that gives you that level of satisfaction all the way through. But stage 1, it's to basically make sure that the contractor's paperwork matches what they're doing.
Yeah.
Also, another part of stage 1 is to walk the waste and transit routes and inspect all areas.
And that includes looking for the vision panels or CCTV to make sure that before they enter the enclosure that it is actually at a point and looks at a point that it is ready for the actual vision inspection.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of times when analysts speak to the contractors, is it ready? Yeah, it's ready, mate. Have a look through the vision panel and they're still removing asbestos in there. Yeah. It's like, hold on a minute, you've not even taken everything down, so I'm not going in there.
No, it's really important that the analyst should only enter when it's at a point where it's completely clean.
And the other thing about that as well, and again, this doesn't always happen, but it should, before the analyst goes in to do stage 2, which is a visual inspection, the supervisor of the asbestos removal contractor should have been in there to check their own work.
Yeah, essentially they should do a visual inspection before inviting the analyst in.
Yeah.
To make sure it is ready.
Yeah.
Again, it is better nowadays. That never happened back when we were doing clearances out on site. But
no.
It is slightly better now.
Slightly, but it's still nowhere near where it should be.
No, I think somebody like ARCA and ACAD have sort of pushed that a bit more, haven't they?
Yeah.
The associations sort of pushed that down into their members as a good thing to do, which has a slight improvement.
So if on stage 1, if everything is fully completed, then move on to stage 2. What's stage 2?
So stage 2 is the actual visual inspection.
Shall I read what stage 2 is called in the guidance?
Give us a technical term, please, Ian.
It's a thorough visual inspection inside the enclosure/work area.
Yeah, so what is this? So the analyst enters the enclosure and it's basically, they have to check every nook and cranny. And what they're looking for is dust and debris. So all dust and debris should be completely removed from the enclosure, because essentially where you've had asbestos removal works undertaken, the actual asbestos material would have been disturbed and released asbestos fibre, and essentially that asbestos fibre could have rested on any surface, any horizontal surface within the enclosure. So therefore any dust could be deemed as contaminated, therefore it has to be completely removed, completely cleaned throughout.
And I mean, an important thing about carrying out the visual inspection, everything that can be removed from the enclosure should be. So all the waste should be out.
Yep.
All equipment should be out, apart from what's needed. So
yeah, there shouldn't be like shovels, hand tools. There shouldn't be any sort of
10 vacs still in there.
Yeah, it should be just minimal vacs. Maybe only access equipment, because access equipment would be needed. But that should all be cleaned down as well, which over the years, that does, we've cleaned the enclosure, but there's all debris still on the scaffold or the tower or anything like that. So all the equipment should be cleaned down as well.
On the flip side, I mean, also I've seen contractors literally get everything out of an enclosure.
You've got nothing.
You've got nothing. And they've removed, I don't know, an AIB ceiling that's 6 metres high.
Yeah.
And there's not even a ladder in there for you to inspect. It's like, no, boys, I can't do what I need to do.
Yeah. So it's quite a methodical process, isn't it? It's literally the analyst has to look at every single bit of that enclosure. So, walls, the floors, the ceilings, pipe runs, ledges, ducts, literally you name it.
Brackets, cables. Like Neil said, literally every nook and cranny.
Yeah.
I mean, any analyst that's worth their weight in gold will tell you that when they go into the enclosure, they'll go into the enclosure, they'll stand, inspect the area from kind of the entrance point.
Get a feel
for it.
Yeah.
Look around and think what would have been the most difficult, hardest to clean part of that enclosure, and then go and have a look at that bit first.
Yeah.
Because lo and behold, and what I mean by hard to clean, so if there's areas where there's really small gaps to kind of get behind, or shelves, ledges, stuff that's up high, stuff that's kind of...
It might get easily forgotten about.
Yeah, easily forgotten, or is just really difficult to get to.
Yeah.
They're kind of, if the area looks all right, I would then go and start in that kind of area, because that's the most likely to find issues.
Yeah.
And you want to find the issues as quickly as possible, because if there is still dust, debris, etc. in there, well, as an analyst, you don't want to be in there. You will need to call the contractor back in, the supervisor and the lads to get back in to re-clean it.
Yeah, if there is a significant amount of dust or debris, then it would fail that stage, and the contractor would be asked to continue cleaning and rectify those areas. So what sort of tools do we need for that? So the analyst would be going in with definitely a torch. Sometimes use mirrors to see get behind pipes, so you can see the hard to reach areas.
Yeah, like behind stuff.
Yeah, I always like a little screwdriver as well, so you can sort of poke into areas to make sure that there's nothing concealed in nooks and crannies.
Yeah, it's a funny one. I mean, you kind of do use the same equipment, but you use it for different reasons. So, I mean, take a boiler room, for instance. If you're checking that all the walls have been scraped, and the asbestos snots and lumps that are on the wall have been removed, well, boiler rooms inherently have been painted, and on the walls there's always lumps and bumps.
Yes.
And
bits of cement sometimes.
Exactly that, bit of cement. But when you're doing a clearance...
You need to poke them, don't you?
Yeah, you need to poke it to make sure it's not a lump of azzy, because the amount of times you do a clearance and there's like a lump of something and you're like, no, it's not, no, it's not, no, it's not. Oh, you've missed a bit.
Yeah.
And so you kind of you need a prodder of sorts. Some people use like a small knife or a blade.
Yeah.
Like you said, like some people use screwdrivers, like flat bladed screwdrivers.
Yeah, little thin one. That was always a good one, because they're quite strong. So if you are poking those bits, doesn't blunt the blade.
Just on vision inspection. So we spoke about it from the point of asbestos removal. This also might be if asbestos clean-up works or remedial works have happened. And what I mean by that is...
Making safe.
Yeah. So, I don't know, pipe insulation, it needed to be rewrapped and then encapsulated. Again, that would be enclosure works. You're not removing asbestos, but you're disturbing asbestos by making it safe.
Yeah, it's essentially the same process, but again, you're also checking the actual job of sealing the asbestos or making it safe as well.
Yes.
So making sure if it was to, calico the pipes, that they are completely calicoed and they are completely sealed.
Yeah.
So it's actually checking the quality of that work as well. And if it requires encapsulating, that it is fully encapsulated.
Yeah. And it's difficult. I mean, time and again, it's kind of, you go and do clearances and you think, well, how has this been missed? And you call the supervisor in and it's kind of been missed and you're like, I don't know how you've missed it. But then, I don't know, it's like from being in the industry as long as I have and looking at some of the enclosures that I've been in over the years, I can see how it gets to that point because you kind of get snowblind.
Yeah, and plus, like, I don't know, you may be cleaning one section of a wall and you run out of time and then you come back the next day and you forget where you left off and maybe start somewhere else. And sometimes that happens, or sometimes you've got 3 good men and 1 not so good.
Yeah.
And that happens, doesn't it?
And on that, like you say, like 3 good, 1 all right. It's like different people have different variances of what's clean.
Yeah.
How clean is clean?
How clean is clean? How many times you, as a contractor, said that to you?
How clean do you want it, mate? Well, I would like all the asbestos dust debris removed, please.
Completely.
Yeah. It always makes me laugh when you do a 4-stage clearance and when you find a bit, and then one of the lads always goes, I left you that bit just to see if you'd find it. Yeah, of course you did.
Yeah.
So that's stage 2. Then it moves on to stage 3, which is air monitoring. So this is the high flow sampling air monitoring that's undertaken. Now, the air pumps are placed in and throughout the asbestos enclosure, near where the asbestos was removed.
I was going to say, yeah, it should be, if it's a ceiling, it should be up high to reflect where that material was. There is a calculation that we have to put a certain amount of pumps in there to reflect the size of the actual area itself.
Yes.
And like Ian said, yeah, they're high flow pumps and they should be distributed evenly across the enclosure as well.
I mean, I haven't got the figures in front of me, but if you're talking about kind of how many you would need, so if you think of, I don't know, a little boiler room in a house or a cupboard or something like that, it's probably just 1 pump. But that can go all the way up to like a large boiler room in a commercial site. You could need 10, 20 pumps.
Yeah, when we talked about the visual inspection, sometimes a visual inspection can take days.
Yeah.
And split over multiple days.
No, exactly that.
And the same with the air monitoring in huge enclosures. The air monitoring can be days. But yeah, what Ian said, so less than 10 cubic centimetres of air would be 1 pump, and then up to, God know how many, depending on the size of the area.
Yeah. So what the pumps are distributed out, the air's pulled through, but also after the pumps are put on, the first thing that's undertaken before the analyst leaves the enclosure to run the pumps is disturbance is carried out during the air test. Now, the reason for this is if there's any asbestos or any fibre that wasn't seen on stage 2, the idea is that the brushing, so we use hand brushes and brooms on really big enclosures, every element of the asbestos enclosure is brushed. So the walls, the floor, the sheeting, the pipes, the brackets, the cables, literally whatever's in that enclosure that's left is disturbed.
Yeah, the idea is to reflect future activities within that area.
Yes.
By disturbing the actual surfaces.
Yeah.
So yes, that's quite an important stage, because if there is any residual asbestos fibre on the surfaces, that's why it's so important that the visual is to a good standard, because if there's any dust or debris, that's going to fail the air test, basically.
Yeah. That's the thing. I mean, a lot of times the visual's carried out, and if the visual is spot on, the air test passes.
Yes.
Because if you can't see it, it's not there. But the air test, that's the catch-all. So it is really looking for the fine microscopic elements that you can't see with your eyes.
Yeah, it's just a double check to make sure it is really clean. So that's the same process. So yeah, the air is collected over, generally as a norm, it's like 480 litres. So, 8 litres over 60 minutes. Can be less, can be more, depending on the actual company's sort of set procedures.
Yeah, once that's passed. So the analyst will generally leave the pumps to run.
Yeah.
They'll leave the enclosure. They then go back into the enclosure to get the cows. They take the cows back to the lab, normally with the supervisor standing by the door saying, is it passed yet, mate? It's like, mate, I've not even mounted them. Give me a few minutes. They'll mount them, count them. If it all meets the criteria, then, yeah, it's passed. And the supervisor and the operatives, they go back and start
deconstructing.
Taking everything down from the enclosure. Then that leads on to stage 4, which is the final assessment, post-enclosure or work area dismantling.
Yeah, so essentially this is basically the final check. So as the enclosure materials are being removed, and those materials have to be disposed of as asbestos waste as well, it's basically getting rid of all that material and making sure that the works have been completed. It's a final check. So where you've taken down enclosure material, sometimes there may be debris trapped behind it, or it may pull certain elements off the enclosure. That has to be cleaned. All tape has to be removed completely, including any staples that have been used to put the sheeting up.
That's a real kind of bugbear. Like a lot of the time, the sheeting will get pulled off.
Ripped off,
yeah. they dispose of that, like, yeah, it's all ready, mate. And then...
It always amazes me how quickly the contractors move when it comes to deconstructing an enclosure.
Very quick. They'll remove everything. But then when you start looking at the finer detail, you'll see the staples haven't been removed from the door that they've stapled the sheeting to.
It looks a mess, doesn't it?
It does look a mess. And the thing is, asbestos works generally. If you're doing asbestos removal, the area doesn't look prettier afterwards.
It looks horrible. It's like, here, you've done a really good job. Look, it looks a mess.
We've demoed something and removed something and we've not put anything pretty back. And then so all of that's done. And then, like I say, all the staples are still there and they all need to go. Everything needs to go.
It's like you're always going to get decorative damage from the enclosure because when they tape to the walls, sometimes they have to spray tack them and that does rip the paint off when the sheeting comes down. It does look a bit of a mess, but yeah, definitely all the tape should be removed. Shouldn't be any little bits of tape left.
No tape, no staples, no sheeting.
Definitely no sheeting. So that should all be, and it's basically that check. So reviewing that, make sure all those materials are gone, making sure there's been no dust or debris that can sometimes get trapped behind the enclosure. Materials.
I mean, on larger enclosures, you might have like double sheeting or you'll have areas where sheeting overlaps. And in the kinks and the creases, sometimes you won't see it. Asbestos will have fallen during the works. The sheeting might have moved, it traps it in there, you don't see it on stage 2, but then on stage 4, when the guys move it, rip it down, then that's when the debris kind of makes itself present.
Yeah.
And that is like the final check, again, just to make sure that everything's all okay. And also on stage 4 as well, it resembles stage 1 in the fact of you walk the waste route and the transit route to make sure there's nothing along there. Because, again, the guys are carrying asbestos waste bags, waste sacks, waste parcels, and all intents and purposes, sometimes a bag might split or something might drop off or they might be carrying something and they might drop one element of it, but they don't realise.
Yeah.
So that's a really important check as well.
And making sure all their gear's gone as well, like vacs.
I was just going to say that. I mean, it's ridiculous. The amount of times when... I mean, I get it, right?
Dismantled airlocks.
Yeah, I understand that contractors feel they've done their bit and they just want to get home. I completely get it.
Yeah.
But the amount of times when we've discovered equipment still on site that they've forgotten. I mean, there was one job that I went along to... I went along and I saw Dave on site and there was 2 lifts and the contractors had used both of these lifts through the project and we were just chatting at the end and he said, I've walked through, I've checked everything, like the supervisor. And then Dave just went back through just to give it a final once over. Yeah. He used the other lift. The lift came up, opened. I think there were 6 vacs, like ladders, transformers. Everything was still in there. It was ridiculous.
Mad. How much was that worth?
Yeah. And the supervisor had to get on the phone to the guys that had already gone because they'd come in like a couple of vans and he had to get them back because they had the equipment van. But they just literally wanted to get home, which I get. But yeah, it was funny.
Yeah, so that is kind of the final sign-off to make sure, 1, the job's been completed, and 2, that there's nothing left there that could harm anyone in the future.
Now, on 4-stage clearances, so when it's completed and everything's done satisfactorily, the analyst will issue 4-stage clearance paperwork, certificate of reoccupation.
Yeah.
Now, as a client, there's some things that you should always check on that area. The stage 1 will determine whether there were any issues or how they were resolved on site. Again, stage 2, there's always comments boxes, which the analyst might put additional comments into what's happened, how it's happened, if there was any kind of issue or what have you.
Yeah, anything that wasn't originally known about, that were identified during the process. So, for instance, if you're taking down an A or B ceiling, you take down the ceiling, there's additional asbestos materials above that which were unknown at the time and they couldn't be removed, etc. That would be recorded in those elements, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and then it's the same on stage 4. So any asbestos elements that still remain in that area should be listed on stage 4. And also any other issues or, like I say, it's other pointers for you as a client to look at and read to help you manage your asbestos going forwards.
100%, because you may have instructed the contractor to remove the ceiling, but it's only on the 4-stage clearance that it's recorded. Yeah, it was removed, but not all of it.
Yeah.
And that's really important to identify within those notes. So it's, the 4-stage clearance is removal of the ceiling. However, there's a little bit left.
Yeah. Exactly that. And I mean,
It's not always highlighted.
No, it's not always highlighted.
Especially if you've employed the contractor direct and they're using their analyst and they're managing the project. If you've paid them to remove it, they might not be overly keen on saying we've done it, but not all of it.
That is one of my bugbears. The fact that contractors can employ an independent analyst.
The word independent is questionable, isn't it?
It is at that point, because if you're paying my bill, then I'm more
I'm
inclined...
not going to tell you you've done a crap job. And I'm not going to sign it off.
Yeah, because, well, I want your work, but then for me to do your work, am I a little bit lax? Yeah, it's not right. But then, I don't know, some contractors get it. They really do get it, and they want that.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's their licence.
Yeah.
And good licensed contractors want good analysts to check their work, because at the end of the day, they don't want it coming back on them.
No. But there are still ones out there that kind of just want it signed off, mate. We've done our bit.
Yeah.
I mean, just going back to your point about asbestos being left in or what have you, it might not even just be the asbestos. So say there was like, I don't know, a ceiling grid that's being removed, but there could be a section that couldn't be removed. So it might not even be asbestos, but part of the grid might still be in place. And again, all those bits should be highlighted within that paperwork so you can manage that process going forwards.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
I think that covers off 4-stage clearances, certificates of reoccupation.
Yeah, again, you have to be UCAS accredited to undertake this type of work. So, yeah, if you are looking for an independent consultancy to undertake your 4-stage clearances or certificate of reoccupations, look for a UCAS on the UCAS website.
Hope you enjoyed that one. I really enjoed that one.
Yeah, no,
that was
good.
a good one.
Okay, so remember, asbestos first, not last.